When a new VAT code has been added to your QuickBooks file, you'll need to consider all the connections that exist in relation to the old VAT code. And they can exist in the chart of accounts, in the product and service list, in rules, or in recurring transactions. So we have 4 areas to look at that we need to consider possible connections. If we start with the chart of accounts, you go to the little gear in the top right and go under your company to accounts and to chart of accounts. You'll see in here there is a column for VAT rate. So if we look down that column, there will be possible connections. We've got one there to no VAT, but you will find connections that you've made in the past to default codes. So we've got one here under office expenses where we've got a default code of 20%. If I now need that to be restated under the new VAT code, I would go to the drop down at the end of the column and I would click in edit there. So if I edit there, you can see my default VAT code is there, and I can drop down and select the new code. So we're going to change that from the 20% code, and when it's used in the future it will apply the 15% code, and I can save that. And that will have updated on the list here, so I've now got the new code showing on my chart of accounts. So first place to go to in relation to new codes is the chart of account list, and make sure those defaults are all amended. After that, we'll look at the product and service list. So again, through the gear in the top right here, I can go to products and services under lists. On the products and service list, you may not immediately see in here the VAT code that exists for a particular product or service. You can go to the little gear here, and if we show more, we've got options to add in different types of columns, but you'll see here there's no option to see a VAT code in here. So we will have to look individually at these items, and there may in some instances be quite a few to see what the feeds are. So if I go into edit under this first one, under event production, I'll be able to drop down the list here, and under taxes on my sales side, but you may also have it on a purchase side, it's got the default tax code there. So I can change that there to say I actually want that to be a 15% standard code instead of defaulting to the 20. If I save that, that's updated that particular product and service in my product and service list. When I pick that now on an invoice, it will feed through the 15% VAT code. So that's a second area to look at your products and services. The third area we would look at is under rules. So if we go to banking on the left hand side and to rules, you may well have set up rules in here. Some will be no VAT rules, but there may be rules that you've set up that are relating to VAT entries, and if you find one of those, we click on edit. We'll see in this instance it's for the office rent. It's been set up to say create an expense for me every time we've got this particular description in here. So when it's telling me that rent me comes through, it's going to default to an entry for expense with a tax code at 20%. I would need to change that for the future to 15%. And that would then automatically generate that expense at 15%. Because it's got VAT on, it's not an automated transaction that I've put in. So it will feed that in through the banking feed, and I can check that I've got my receipt for it. I've got my VAT evidence at 15% in the future, and I could then save that. That's updated my rule. The fourth and final area to look at in terms of these connections to VAT would be in our recurring transactions list. So if I go to lists here again through the little gear, recurring transactions, if you've got any recurring transactions in here, you just want to make sure that the entry that's generated is not showing the 20%, the old VAT code, it's showing the new VAT code in here. So I can go in for unscheduled ones. I would go to the drop down here and I can go and edit them. The edit exists for scheduled ones here in the end. But if I go in and edit, I can bring up the transaction. You'll see it's got the old VAT code in here, and I can change that to the 15% code. It's recalculating the VAT on this potential transaction, and I'm going to save that template there. So that's updated my VAT code on a recurring transaction. So So just to summarise, once you've added your VAT code into QuickBooks, check those 4 areas, check your chart of accounts, check your products and service list, check your rules, check your recurring transactions, and look at those feeds at 20% that are coming through. And those are the 4 areas you need to consider.